What do DC fanboys and snobby critics the world over absolutely agree on? The MCU is over! I've heard that take a lot in the post-Endgame era. If you go through any deeper dive videos that focus on MCU movies, you'll see that I'm a fan in general. That may be understating it, but the point is, I think that Marvel Studios does a good job in general when it comes to producing movies. I'm also a fan of DC. That being said, I'm not a fanboy. I have no issue saying when I think a movie just wasn't good. The MCU averages more hits than misses, and the DCEU, well, that's what's actually over, at least in terms of what we have come to know it as. Let's get into the state of the comic cinematic universe. I have seen a bunch of people complaining about not liking Phase 4. I'm not going to push back about that, especially because when asked, most people can't tell me exactly what they don't like about it. Hell, half of those people haven't seen most of Phase 4. But I feel like we need to look at Phase 4 and keep in mind what has happened with the previous phases. Phase 4 is almost a weird combination of Phases 1 and 2. Like Phase 1, it's the beginning of a new saga. Like Phase 2, it's fighting against fan expectations from starting a new story after the big team up. Speaking of Phase 1, it's my least favorite MCU phase. I didn't like Incredible Hulk at all. Thor was better for me, but not much. The first Avenger was so incredibly boring to me that it took around 4 times for me to actually watch the whole movie. But they made everything right with the Avengers. Now, that isn't to say that any of these movies are perfect, but I compartmentalized it. If we had to get through those movies to get the Avengers, then they were worth it. More on that later. Much in the same way, Phase 4 is building out the universe for the big team-ups of Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars. So not as many things of consequence, and then there are even things that we just don't know are of consequence, is happening in these projects compared to where the MCU has been. They are fleshing out the roster and the multiverse. They are establishing rules, relationships, and scenarios. Sometimes these are things that may take away from easy cookie-cutter excitement tropes. I can also say I wasn't the biggest fan of Phase 2 either. I didn't like Iron Man 3, and Shang-Chi was too far away for it to fix one of my biggest issues with that movie. I liked Thor 2 less than I liked Thor 1. Age of Ultron is a miss for me, but that's because of behind-the-scenes issues. I still got the team up that I loved in this phase, which was Captain America Winter Soldier. It saved that mini franchise for me. Just like after 2012's The Avengers, I've seen a lot of the same takes after Endgame defiantly asking where the MCU could possibly go from there. But here's the thing. Endgame was the end. It's kinda in the name. Yeah, I know there was another movie after that. But what Far From Home did is take on the heavy lifting of the direct fallout of the blip and Iron Man passing. It basically served to wrap up that ending that started in Endgame. It was never anyone at Marvel Studios' intention for a story, stakes, or grandiosity increase directly following Endgame. Phase 4 is a new start. It was always going to be a new start, a new saga. The Infinity Saga has concluded. That was just common sense. But when you add in the now confirmed rumors that there's a Secret Wars movie coming, the approach Marvel took was a no-brainer. Remember Captain America Civil War? It was the first really big Avengers-level team-up that wasn't an actual Avengers film. Plenty of people had issues with it, but this isn't a review. Now, I am a strong opponent of the idea that these movies have to be 100% comic accurate. It's never gonna happen. It's not what's supposed to happen. It's not their goal. That being said, the more we get from the comics that we like already, it does tend to make me happier. If they deviate, I need it to be close to the quality of the original. The main thing the movie was missing to put it closer to the comic event? Scale. In the original Avengers comic, there were 5 Avengers. So when the movie came and there were 6, that's fairly even. But Civil War, and at the time, only the first Civil War event in the comics had occurred, had a roster that pretty much spanned the entire Marvel Earth-based universe, and some beyond it. Also, many of the key players either didn't exist yet in the MCU and or Marvel Studios didn't have the rights to them. So drastic changes were inevitable from the jump. With the changes in film rights, the success, and the sheer practice Marvel Studios has been able to get in, I think Secret Wars will be able to more closely resemble the comic story in sheer scale. Think of the amount of available characters that were around when Civil War came out. Now look at the sheer amount of characters that have been added in some way in Phase 4 that we know of to this point. Yelena Belova, Shang-Chi, Ned seems to have powers, America Chavez, Speed, Wiccan, a new Captain America, potentially a new Falcon, Sylvie, Kate Bishop, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, Kang and his variants, Mighty Thor, and the list goes on. I think some people just want the MCU to fail. I think some people have MCU fatigue. I think some people, without bias, legitimately take issue with the storytelling in Phase 4. But what is objectively not true is that the MCU is over. There is definitely more tread left on those tires.
Tell me. Do you bleed?
The DCEU, on the other hand, has been a shit show, both on and off screen. Executives unofficially killed the DCEU a few years ago when they started saying the movies would no longer be connected moving forward. And then executives have officially killed the DCEU with the recent announcement that they are going to refocus and do a 10-year plan that will build out a legit DC-wide franchise similar to how Marvel Studios did the MCU. There are bright spots in the slate that Warner has released since Man of Steel, but there were so many missteps that, objectively, the MCU is the superior movie franchise. That's how it is now, but this news definitely gives me hope. I'll admit I'm not the most confident that this plan will see its conclusion. I think DC threw away a lot of goodwill with fans that aren't necessarily the die-hard, hardcore variety like I am. Also, after an executive officially coming out and saying they want to be like Marvel, the comparisons aren't going to stop anytime soon. So that's a lot of pressure. There are, however, 2 things that DC still has an advantage in. One, even being an advantage over Marvel Studios. First of all, they failed. A lot. Wise people see that as invaluable because not only do they have a formula from Marvel to borrow from, but they also have so many examples of things that didn't work before for themselves that they can now avoid. The second advantage they have is that they own all of their characters. Literally the only roadblock to DC having a great connected universe is execution and executive interference. The DCEU should never have gotten off to the rocky start that it did if they had just taken their time and slowly introduced character after character while giving great stories and connecting the universe. Everything would be fine at this point. Hopefully, that is what they mean when they say that they're going to borrow Marvel Studios' blueprint. So, no, the MCU is not over. They have a ton of story left to tell, more experience and freedom than ever, and are still doing well at the box office. To date, only one MCU release has failed to double its budget at the box office. The DCEU did die, sure, but it's being reborn, and I'm cautiously optimistic about its future. But what do you guys think? Has the MCU fallen out of favor with you? Do you enjoy the DCEU more than you enjoy the MCU? Do you think the DCEU will be able to successfully pull off this massive reset? Let me know down in the comments. Always feel free to subscribe to the channel for more deeper dive videos. Check out any of the videos that you may happen to see on the screen somewhere around here. And as I always say, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys later.